this video I want to talk about pedal boards a little bit. Here's a pedal board that I built a little while ago, and what I did is I put in a power supply from Truetone that I got from Zac Childs, and he was nice enough to send this to me to try out, and it worked great for this pedal board. I decided that lately I wanted to shrink it down. It's a little bit too big, it's a little bit too heavy. When you build something like this yourself, it does tend to get a little heavy when you use wood. What I ended up doing was getting one of these cheaper ones off Amazon, this pedal board off Amazon, and I'll put a link in the description for that to check out. But this one was only, I think, about 40 bucks. I really like the size of it. I like how compact it is. But for this one, since I had that Truetone supply on my big board, I had to use my old Pedal Power 2, not even a Pedal Power 2 Plus, just a Pedal Power 2, and that's what's right here. This Pedal Power 2 is probably over 20 years old, and it still works great, but the problem with it is it only goes up to 200 milliamps. And these Strymon pedals, if you run any of these Strymon pedals, they need 250 milliamps minimum. So this cannot not run the Strymon pedals. Now you can get around that by plugging into the auxiliary outlet that's on these power supplies. You can see here what I did is I just modified this a little bit. I cut a hole in this back side of this pedal board so that I could plug in this short pigtail that I made. And then I have a power supply. This power supply right here is able to run one of the Flints. This is greater than 250 milliamps. So I kind of had to rig up a system to make it work. And it did work like this. And I actually had two of these power supplies, one on the other side for the Brigadier, and then one on this side for the Flint. The only problem is then if I use that in conjunction with a looper to practice or something, I would get terrible buzz. I was getting some ground humming and stuff like that. So what I want to do is take the Truetone power supply, put it in here, see if I can get it to fit and work in here, and get rid of all of my extra wiring that I have and clean this up. So you can see that I cut a piece of sheet metal here to hold in this power supply. Let's just unplug all this stuff. And I also put down this dual lock tape, I think, to hold this in place. So I'll probably save this for a smaller board. Now I already measured this, and the Truetone supply does fit on this. It does fit underneath here. We're going to see what the clearance looks like because, you know, it is a little bit wider than this one, like this. And we'll see if we can get it to work with this. You can see I had all these power supply cables zip tied from before. That was actually from a different pedal board, and I just kept them zip tied, but I probably will take that apart a little bit. But for now, I can just kind of push that aside, and then we'll just work on mounting this and see how that goes. So for this one, there's a mounting bracket that it comes with. I used that in this build. Let's take that apart. I think I got it in there pretty snug. Take up the slack. There we go. So there's a bracket on the side here that I used as part of this to mount it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to reuse that bracket or not, so I might have to take that off. I can put this aside. So one thing I'm seeing as an issue right now are these mounting locations with the female threads right here. They stick up, and this is meant for a smaller power supply to fit between them and to mount to that, like I had on the Pedal Power 2. So for the Pedal Power 2, it fits, you know, it fits nicely like this. This one, as you can see, the difference between the one Spot Pro and the Pedal Power 2, you have an extra couple inches right there. So that's going to be an issue. I may have to remove those mounting locations right there. The other issue we're going to have is this is thicker than the Pedal Power 2, and that means it's going to stick out more, and there's going to be greater interference with the floor. You can see this is exaggerated because those posts are underneath there, but right now it would stick out too far along this plane right here. The other thing we have to think about is this power supply. We've got to make sure that lines up with one of the holes in the back here. So let me take off these brackets here. Okay, so put this in here. The problem is, hole doesn't line up right here. It will work like that right there. What I'm gonna have to do is cut another window in like I did here. I have to cut another window carefully. Okay, so I'm going to try dual lock as my first way to attach the power supply. I have it on the back of the one spot. I have it right here. And when I attach that, just to test it out, it does raise it up a little bit. So what that means is I have another problem, that although this is the easiest way to mount this, and it should be strong enough, one thing it did was change the location of the plug right there. So I have to cut that corner off. I have it marked with a pencil, you can see right there. So I'll just cut that off. The other problem is this raised it up, and now this corner is really sticking up a lot further than before. And so what that means is that these feet are not tall enough, and I have some much bigger ones right here. They will give me enough clearance. So I'm going to put these on. The only problem is now this is tapped for a really small screw that does not work for this foot. So I looked in my stockpile and I found these machine screws. And I'm going to tap some threads in there. I'm going to drill and tap for 8x32, and then that should be long enough to hold those feet on. All right, let's put the power supply in there next. I already have the dual lock on there, and should fit fine. Power outlet will now be able to be plugged in. And this stuff is surprisingly strong. This dual lock is really, really hard to get off there. The only thing I'd be worried about is if this got too hot, you know, in the summertime, leaving it in a car or something like that might affect it. But man, that dual lock is great stuff. So I have access to the power supply right there. That should be good. And now I have clearance, as you can see, probably there. We can now clear that corner. And we're good to go. We can start wiring it up. Okay, so we're ready to start putting this together. And a couple things I want to point out, things I like to do when I build these pedal boards. I like to use the dual lock. That's really strong, better than Velcro, a lot cleaner looking. And you can snap them on and off, and they really are secure. Once you put them on there, they're not going anywhere. So flipping this over, again, we use the dual lock to secure the One Spot Pro here. I did find some better lower profile feet. They were just a little bit lower, still gave us clearance for this corner right here, and they didn't stick out as far. They weren't as squared off on the edges, so that worked better for the corners. And got the power supply cables here, as you can see. Another tip that I will pass on to you is what I like to do is put a piece of painter's tape and mark the different inputs so I can keep track of which is which, because you have these different options here. You have on the One Spot Pro the ability to switch from 9 to 12 volts right here. input or switch number 5, you can see right here, you can switch it to between 4 and 9 volts, and you can vary that. There's a knob right here that you can control the voltage. So that would be if you want to simulate a dying 9-volt battery. Some pedals, it's like a vintage fuzz pedals, might sound better with that. So that's what that's for. So you have these switches here that go along. So you do need to keep track of that. If you have certain old Boss pedals, they prefer to run on 12 volts. I have some Arion pedals that are from that same era, made in Japan in the early 80s. They like to run on 12 volts. Another thing I want to point out is kind of like the whole point of me putting this board together with this one Spot Pro, which seems like overkill for the small board, is because you have the ability to run pedals that are 250 milliamps or greater. So you have 250 milliamps here and here, and then 2 at 500 milliamps. So what you can do for the ones that are at 500 milliamps is you actually can run a splitter. And so because there's so many milliamps available, what you can do is you can split that off to several pedals, and it will still run quietly, depending on the pedals, but it will still pretty much run quietly. I'm not using this one right here because that's AC. So that's, you got to be careful. You don't want to plug in a DC pedal into that. It will fry it. So I'm just keeping that offline right now. We're not using that. And I don't need the 18 volt supplies here right now. But the idea for this, what I'm thinking is I'm going to use this board as is, but also with those options available, I can also expand from it. So I could have a couple other pedals next to it. Like my wah, for example, I keep next to this pedal board, and I use one of these power supply cables for the wah sometimes, or I run the wah on a battery. So I can kind of use this as my main grab and go board, but then I can also expand and have other pedals, depending on the gig and situation, running off this power supply. And then I can just bring those extra pedals and set them off to the side. That way I'm cut it down from this gigantic board that I had to something that's easier to fit in a bag. Another thing I like to use are these soldered cables, and I put these together. These I can put a link in the description. I found on Amazon, and they're really great, low profile. You can solder them up. I'm using Mogami cable. It's 2319, but those are excellent, real high quality. They sound very clear, and they're the lowest profile that I could find that are right angle. As far as layout goes, I'm going to stick with the layout I've been using, which is to put a fuzz pedal first. Input's going to go into the fuzz pedal, so the guitar sees the fuzz pedal first. Then it's going to go to my wah, and then my tuner. So I'll put this tuner here. I don't really think it matters where the tuner goes because it is true bypass anyway, so I haven't really noticed the difference putting it anywhere on the board, but I like to keep it right down here in the corner, because I'm going to just put it there. And then we're going to put the fuzz pedal up here in this corner. Then what I like to use next right here would be, I'm going to put the Timmy pedal here. That's going to go right there. I did have a really short one of these cables somewhere that I was going to use, but I can't find it right now. But I think I have enough for this board. So I'm just going to tuck these. I'll just tuck the power cables back there for now. And then we'll worry about zip tying them or whatever later. This one seems to be a little twisted, so I'm going to double check that. There we go. That's pretty good like that. So because these are so low profile, you can get them pretty close together. So the closest you can get them together is 1 inch. So you have 1 inch between pedals there with those low profile jacks. So I like that. So I'm going to put that one probably like that. And then I have this Andromeda pedal, natural overdrive. This is like a Noble's ODR1. This is one you can buy and build yourself in a kit form. I did that, and I think it's excellent. It's really, it's very clear sounding, and it has some grit to it, but it doesn't have like it doesn't really push the mids too much and drop out the bass. You have a depth knob, which is full on right there. That's full bass, like a standard old Noble's pedal, but then you can turn the bass off if you want, roll the bass off if you want right there. And the Spectrum is sort of like a treble control, but it's a little bit different, they say. I don't mess with that too much. I make sure that there's enough brightness, but very, very nice sounding, especially with humbuckers. I like to use that, and it doesn't make it too fat. It just kind of sits right in the mix perfectly. That in combination with the Timmy is great. I really like that. So if you have a top-mounted pedal like this, top-mounted jacks, you can get them even closer here. So let's see what that results in. So if I put this one here like this, now we're talking, I can get them, let's see, so only a ½ inch. That makes sense because that was an inch. So ½ an inch of space right there is really as tight as you can get it. So the length of the cables is kind of important depending, like this isn't really working that great. You can see I don't have enough to kind of put it down there and let it go underneath necessarily. It kind of puts an awkward kink in it. So you can always put a longer one in, like this, and then put it down underneath. And it's not so awkward of a kink then. It has some room there as relief, like that. So I'm going to do that, and then it's going to go to, we're going to go to the Univibe, which is the full tone version. It's called the Deja Vibe, and this is an excellent pedal. And I also made a little riser out of plywood, put it on top there. So that's ½ inch plywood right there, I think, or is that 3/8? Let's see what that is. 3/8. So I have 3/8 inch plywood, again with a dual lock on both sides, and that just helps to raise it up a little bit so I can reach that switch and this knob. You can control that with your foot if you need to, but I kind of set it and forget it. I don't really mess with knobs a lot while I'm playing. I just prefer to try to concentrate and listen on the music if I can. So we're gonna go from here to input here. So I need one of the longer ones to reach that. Let's see how this is going to do. I'll try to run this down along the side and here. I also need to get the power for that pedal plugged in. And one thing I need to do is make sure that I'm saving. I want to use the 100 milliamps can be for the pedals that I showed you so far. They don't require anything greater than that, but on these I have two Strymon pedals. I want to run the Flint and the Brigadier, and those both need 250 minimum. So I need to run 6, 7, 8, or 9 on those, and make sure that I don't forget that. So here's 6. There's 5. So I can run 5 to. Let me pull 6 out. Here's 8. 7 I'm using right now for. I think I'll switch this. This is 3, so I'm going to run 3 to the tuner. Tuner doesn't require much at all. And then I'm going to save, let's see, that's 1. 1 I can save for the wah if I never need it. Right now I'm running the wah on a battery, so I don't really need that one. Just tuck it up in there for now. That's 6. I can run 6 to it, so I'm going to run 6 to the Andromeda pedal. There we go. Something like that, and just as long as I have room here for the Flint's got to go here, and I'm going to do the Brigadier here, so that should work. The reason I have this down here is because I like to run it before this, but also it's easier to reach the tap right here, and so I want to make sure I have space for that. and that doesn't interfere. So that should be fine right there. That looks good like that. And this should be good here, somewhere in here. I could always pop them off again, and there we go. Readjust if they're not exactly square. I like to get them exactly square, like that one I just put down does not look completely square. But this will go underneath that. Okay, so we're good right there. And you can do some final adjustments. You know, if you, I want to move this one over a little bit. I don't need it quite so close. You know, just something like that. Use that space up a little bit. And I have to still run the power to this guy. And I have, how many do I have left over? Okay, so I have 2 left over right now. I do have 9. I can run power also to from 9 to one of them. But what's nice is I can run a splitter. If I really did need to, you know, even put another board together right next to it, I can just split off of that. So I think what I'll do is, that's going to be for, that's for the wall if I need it, but I'm running it off a battery. I can run 8 to so I just need some power here for the fuzz. There. And then this is extra. So it looks pretty clean like that. Now back here, all I have to do is kind of deal with the cables. And I can use some cable ties, maybe to put them. So as far as the cables, I'm just going to really tuck them in here right now for now. Test everything out, make sure it's working. I like this because it does give me room for expansion onto another small board, but then I still am kind of compact, and this is a really great size. I've used this board for a bunch of gigs, and I really like the size. You can pack a lot of sounds right here in this small little profile. And you can see we have access to the power right here, and we should be good. Plenty of clearance for this. All right, we'll test it out.